would like to start by asking all of us to engage in a few simple activities. First of all, raise your hand high and proud and honest if you swear at least once a week. Okay? Now, keep your hands up if you swear at least once a day. Okay. Finally, put your hands up if you are a devoted swearer. Okay. Amazing, thank you so much. Now, here's something else I would like everybody to do. This time, I want all of us to use our imagination and picture a scene in your mind. Ready? So here's the scene. Imagine this. You sat down to watch your favorite movie. You have the popcorn ready, the dog is at your feet, and now you're definitely ready to watch. And then you see this. Hold on, that's not all. It gets worse. So, in this situation, what might be the first thing you blurt out? It might be something like this. Okay, so where am I going with all this? Just now, I convinced you, or you convinced yourselves, that the same words that we are banned from using, the words that have so much power to upset, actually are heavily used and serve a purpose. They make us feel better. But because of how these words were used in the past, there are natural associations with traits like disrespectful or untrustworthy. But have you ever wondered, how come? Because through these activities that we've just done, we recognize that such language isn't always meant to hurt anyone. So why does everyone around us say no to these words in the first place? How does it affect us psychologically, and what gives these words so much power? To start, we can look at the history. And first off, the history of English taboo language. This language had a pretty bad reputation from about 1,000 years ago, around the time of the Battle of Hastings in England. And this battle ended in England's brand new King William, formerly the Duke of Normandy. And under his rule, England changed a lot, from laws all the way to language. And back in those days, the nobles from Normandy all spoke the high-class, posh language, which was Old French, while the peasants and the commoners used a different language, the inferior, vulgar Old English. And yes, it was the peasants and their Old English language that gave birth to most modern swear words, including the famous S word or F word. Okay. So by looking at the past, we recognize that some aspects of taboo language, in fact, never change. And its status and vulgarity comes from how it was used back then. But of course, language don't quite stay the same, and it's constantly evolving, changing the very definitions of taboo language. And in the midst of this transformation, culture becomes a really important factor. So a normal word in one culture could be extremely offensive in another. In fact, I would like to ask the audience who knows 2 or more languages to try and think of a swear word in each of the languages you know. I guess that was pretty easy, right? Because yes, taboo language is internationally prominent, and it gives us a glimpse of the cultural values linked to that language. For example, in Quebec, Canada, where they use Canadian French, much of the taboo language is linked with the Catholic Church, mostly because of how the church was involved in its history. Or in Thailand, some of the worst swear words that you can say to anyone are about animals, due to its hierarchical structure. So yes, it's true that taboo language is prominent in every culture, and it teaches us a lot about what is important in the culture, especially what people are scared of. Taboo language, despite its negative social and historical connotations, like we mentioned just now, reveals yet another fascinating side of itself through psychology. So one research in Australia and New Zealand shows that using profanity when chatting with your friends are significant signs that you trust each other very well. And this trust can really influence your ability to interact and build friendships positively. this tells us that using taboo language and knowing the boundaries of what your friend might find funny or offensive is a solid proof that we know each other very well. Another interesting study is done by Dr. Richard Stevens of Keele University, UK. And in this experiment, 67 volunteers had to put their hand in ice-cold water. Now, you can probably imagine how painful that was. So in this experiment, the volunteers were asked to either say a neutral word or a swear word while keeping their hands underwater, comparing the duration that they were able to do so. And the result was that on average, people were able to keep their hands underwater for much longer when they were swearing. Ooh. So what does this tell us? This tells us that the possible reason why we keep swearing is that saying these words out loud actually help us cope with pain better, physically. And all the other studies done by Dr. Stevens shows that saying swear words out loud can actually boost physical power and pain tolerance. Perhaps your perception of taboo language has changed a little bit by now. But what I want to emphasize here is not about how beneficial swear words are. It's about how much power they're given. Because all the examples that I just mentioned show the authority that these words have gained over time. So now you might be thinking, what exactly is this power? So here's a little experiment that I would like everybody to participate in. And it's called the emotional strip. Now in this experiment, there will be a series of words on the screen behind me. And all you need to do is at the count of 3, so I will count 1, 2, and then you say the word, is at the count of 3, you shout out the color of the words. Are you ready for this? I'm going to start with the first 3 words, okay? Here we go. 1, 2. Green. 1, 2. Red. 1, 2. So I guess that was okay, right? Now here's this. Let's see if we can do it with the second set of words. So are you ready? Just do the same thing. Okay, so 1, 2. Red. 1, 2. Blue. 1, 2. Sorry. I heard violin somewhere. Well, so this time it was much slower, I felt like. And you might be wondering why. Just by changing the word from a neutral word to a word with strong negative connotations, it shows that this process of reading out the color of the words becomes really confusing. So can you see, the emotional reactions towards these words are so strong that it throws us off completely and interrupts our attention. Yes, they're that powerful, affecting how we process information in the brain. So now that we discovered this power these words in taboo language have, we have to ask ourselves, what can we do about it? And when do we use this power? Well, here's one surprising thing about this power, and that is the words itself do not hold any power on its own at all, because it's all us. We rule our words, phrases, language, and culture. So in actually answering that question, there's one really important thing that we should know about, as the only beings who can control this power. And that is to understand why someone would swear. Sort of like putting yourself into their shoes and walking in them a lot. Because by understanding why someone would swear at you, it actually hurts less. So finally, what do we really mean when we use taboo language? Turns out, it means much more than the words we speak. It's the power behind it. And by understanding and being mindful of this power and richness these words have, we can finally see the true influence of these words. And be careful of the words you use, because you never know how much power they can have in the heart of your listener. Thank you very much.